My name is Taylor, and I had probably the sort of typical ADHD boy experience growing up. A lot of difficulty in school, focusing, paying attention. I was initially put in remedial everything because I just had no idea what the heck was going on. I actually didn't even know. Um, I didn't know we had grades in school. I didn't even, that's how out of it I was. I didn't even understand the absolute basics of school. Over the years, pediatricians had suggested, hey, I think, your son has ADHD and he should probably be tested. And we didn't end up doing it for, I think, years until I was in high school. But yeah, I really struggled. It's one of those things where looking back, I think any of us who have experienced something like, brain fog, you hear that term and you immediately know what it is and that you have it, right? I just had no idea. I just thought that's just how I was. It was not actually until high school. That's also when it starts mattering more. I was finally tested and it sort of coincided with a Lyme disease diagnosis. And that was tough because you know, I really started to struggle. I did some neuropsych testing and my processing speed was down into the 14th percentile, whereas everything else was in the high 90s. And I felt I couldn't latch on to, the engine that runs you. It's like the engine is spinning, but there's nothing connected to it to drive you anywhere. My mother actually brought me to a naturopathic doctor who was, I guess, into sort of a low carb thing. And I had no idea. He didn't call it that. I don't think he called it anything, or I just don't remember. But I remembered in high school starting to make adjustments to my carb intake. And I did start to notice that brain fog disappear. I was eventually prescribed, I think by the time I was in college, I was prescribed a few of them. I tried, I forget which I tried, but most of them really did not work well with me. I'm very, very sensitive. I mean, if I have coffee, I get 20 to 30 minutes of sort of like the caffeine productivity high. And then after that, it starts slowly descending into anxiety and jitteriness. I've always been very sensitive. I experienced that with the medication they gave me. I had these two tensions at play. I've always been a sort of evolutionary biology, ancestral living kind of guy like that, or that's the thing that resonates with me. I'm not saying that I lived that, but I aspired to, certainly. It was always very interesting to me. But at the same time, I was a chef. I was a practicing French chef. I trained in Paris, and there's plenty of pastry going on there. And heck, I baked bread professionally, and I was obsessed. At some point, I just started to feel terrible. Gut issues, skin issues. The brain fog got worse. My vision started to go. I had neuropathies, and my doctors, and I had, maybe 5 of them in that span. This is post-college, my adult life. And they all went, yeah, I mean, you're kind of fine. Your blood sugar looks okay. Maybe you're flirting with pre-diabetes. I started to vibrate at night, like that time when you're going in and out of sleep and maybe you might get that hypnotic jerk, that falling sensation. I always got that, but it started turning into shaking. I have full body shaking. And it was that combined with the vision, where my vision was starting to go. Things were becoming blurry. I thought, okay, that's it. I've got to do something. The only thing I feel sure of is that whatever we used to do is right. It's what we evolved doing. It's what formed our bodies. The environment plus biology is what creates the current version of that the current iteration of that biology. And so I just thought our ancestors for most of the year were going to be eating largely meat. That's what was available. So that's what I went towards. And my goodness, what a difference that made. I mean, all of those things I described just started to evaporate. And I've gone on and off of it. So I've noticed, I can see those symptoms start to come back when I go off. I started to do these 1 week on, 1 week off tests. And I just had to admit that I felt much better. And a lot of those problems would come back when I went on. So yeah, that was maybe a few years before I still had to, I had to make the decision to put to rest this culinary side of me, that version of the culinary side of me that it really resonated with me artistically and on the human level and an ancestral level of feeding other people and being involved with nutrition and community. But yeah, something had to give because that way wasn't right. And I eventually, mourned that loss of that way of life, which I think we all have to do when we're making a life change, a lifestyle change. It changed my life completely. I think everyone says that. And that's why I'm so interested in, I've always been interested in human problems. Because I've worked as, an athletic coach, a tutor, a nanny, so I've seen those, the athletic, academic, and domestic sides and of humanity. And this has just such a profound impact on everything because it's obviously what we eat is such an incredible, it is a profound input into our systems. And so it touches everything. It touches every aspect of life. So yeah, that's why one of the reasons why I and you and anyone who does this believes so much in it, because we've seen that. So yeah, how do you come back from the setbacks? Look, I've certainly had my setbacks. I talk about accounting, right? Accounting is there's this, explanations for why something happened to characterize the scenario, the situation around it versus excuses. The issue is that this sort of thing triggers guilt, but it often doesn't change the outcome. So effectively, all that has happened is that you now have eaten something that probably makes you feel bad. So that's negativity, right? And now you feel bad on top of that with no possibility of that feeling bad about yourself helping you. And in fact, you probably ate that thing because you were feeling bad in the first place. And so this is the accounting I was referring to. I think the accounting is really important because we can plan ahead and we can say, hey, if I encounter this scenario again, what do I do? How do I make sure that, or how do I mitigate it? You can't make sure of anything. We can mitigate. And there's more in terms of specifics, what I recommend people try, but it's also personal. Some people, the answer is fasting. For some people, the answer is get right back onto eating something immediately. And in fact, even if you're not really hungry, go and eat it, kind of get back into that taste. That's what I do personally. When, frankly, someone approaches me asking for why ADHD is something that can be managed with, diet, and specifically a ketogenic diet, or why they should do it, I think that, my personal experience, of course, has shown that this just makes a lot of sense. And I think there's always two sides to this, right? There's the intellectual side of things, And then there's the feeling side of things. And feeling is the ultimate arbiter of absolutely everything we do, and we've all tried this, right? You sit there and you think and you scheme and you do the pro cons list, and you think, oh man, I have this plan. It's the perfect plan. And the absolute best that side of you, the intellect, can do is just lob it back to the subconscious. And your subconscious self either goes, okay, and then you'll do it. Or it goes, nah, and then you're not doing it. The end. Look, I could explain this to you to make it make sense intellectually, but that's not going to change your behavior alone. There's more to it. I offer, hey, let's give this kind of thing a shot at a minimum to give you context. And now look, that's sort of like an pseudo intellectual plus emotional buy-in. So you have maybe another system involved in the decision-making process to encourage, hey, you know what? Yeah, let's try this for like a month and see what happens, and see, do we get a better outcome? Because at a minimum, you get this context. Your body knows what it feels like to have been in ketosis, and you can't unknow that feeling. And that's really valuable. How I came to work with Ona, what happened was, I essentially went on what people will call a carnivore diet. And I didn't know people were calling it anything. I just was doing it on the basis of my beliefs. And it was so interesting to me. And I was working with people at the time, I was working with people on the autism spectrum, and I was working with them in holistic ways, and food was included in that. So, and I saw profound impacts on that front. So I was really starting to get into it. I wanted to do more professionally with it. I wanted to be able to reach more people. I started going to these low carb conferences, and I went to Low Carb Denver, a few years ago. I forget when that was now, but oh man, I just totally fell in love with the whole zeitgeist. It was so cool to be among, your people. Everyone says that same sort of thing. It's like your tribe. Mariella Glant was one of the speakers at that. Yet I've been able to work with a lot of people in the Bronx, New York. And then there's a study that we're working on in conjunction with Mark Cucuzzello in West Virginia. So, that's just been an amazing experience to really make it practical. I feel incredibly blessed. There's just so much to it. I love being able to do this. It's amazing.